I want to talk about a new study, which, if we interpret it colloquially, if we interpret it in layman's terms, confirms that the United States is not a democracy, but rather an oligarchy. This is a really interesting study.
You may have seen an article in your social media newsfeed or heard a celebrity talking about the idea of America being an oligarchy. A few years ago, a couple of professors made a big splash in the media, writing a paper that, according to Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, tries to statistically quantify that feeling that everyone has that access and power and influence disproportionately go to elites. And they did this by looking at survey data and a dataset of survey questions asked by various public polling organizations during their periods of study. Specifically, they were looking for survey questions asking about things that could be construed as opinions on a policy change. They showed that in their data, policies with higher support among the wealthy than the middle income were more likely to become enacted through some policy alteration at the federal level, whether that through Congress, the presidency, or the Supreme Court, and policies with more middle income support than wealthy support were less likely to be enacted. Let's hear how Jennifer Lawrence puts it in this recent video.
They looked at 1,800 public opinion polls over a 20-year period.
Now, don't get me wrong. I applaud Ms. Lawrence and her political activism, and anyone who is motivated to activism by the increasingly plutocratic nature of our society. But this graphic depicting the desires of Page and Gilens' median income earners may be a little bit misleading. While there is more concern among median income earners for social programs, the support for anything having to do with the globe is simply not there. And here's the ugly truth about American oligarchy. According to the Page and Gilens data, middle-income poll respondents tend to differ from high-income poll respondents in being more xenophobic, isolationist, anti-environmental, and racist. And this may be where Trump saw what to his mind may have been an underserved market. You see, Page and Gilens were making the rounds in the media and talk shows in early 2014, a time when Trump would likely have been making a decision as to whether to make another presidential run. The policies which had the largest difference in favorability between the wealthy and the middle income were the biggest drivers of Page and Gilens' results. When we look at what those policies were, you may notice a pattern emerge. Among the top 20 data points representing enacted policies with the largest support differential between the wealthy and the middle, wealthy favorability to foreign trade is well represented. NAFTA is mentioned in 7 of the top 20 enacted data points when ranked on the wealth-middle difference, and restrictions on trade with Japan are among the top 20 non-enacted data points. Opposition to foreign trade is so prominent in Trump's rhetoric that I don't think I need to include a specific clip of him criticizing NAFTA. But I didn't realize until I started to edit the video that he actually mentions Japan in his announcement address, which is weird for 2016.
When did we beat Japan at anything? They send their cars over by the millions.
Environmental preservation seems to be another policy with much more elite support than middle-income support. A Clinton administration expansion of wildlife preserves was the highest differential enacted policy after NAFTA in the original data set covering 1981 through 2002.
You know, you're not allowed to use hairspray anymore because it affects the ozone. You know that, right?
Middle-income earners also seem much less inclined to offer international aid. Several of the highest differential data points in the 1981 to 2002 period are related to foreign aid to former communist regimes in the 1990s aftermath of the fall of the Eastern Bloc.
The United States is the world's largest giver in the world by far of foreign aid, but few give anything to us.
Middle-income earners are also much more moralistic. Various abortion restrictions are among the top issues with the biggest divide between elite and middle-income support, as well as restrictions of stem cell research. When Page and Gilens look at more recent data from 2005 and 2006, there are even more striking similarities with Trump's campaign messaging. Specifically, one of the data points with the largest differentials in this time period were non-enacted proposals to deport all illegal aliens. Page and Gilens report that the elite prefer this policy at a rate of 35%, whereas middle-income earners prefer deportations at a rate of 51%. Policies toward, quote, Arab citizens, unquote, is among the top differentiated data points in this period. 46% of the middle preferred mandating they carry ID cards versus 31% of elites, and 25% of the middle-income respondents said they would be in favor of, quote, holding Arabs in camps, unquote, compared with 13% of elites. This seems to be at least uncannily coincidental with the focal points of Trump's campaign messaging and policies as president. Here, let me read you the question text from the dataset. Please tell me if you would favor or oppose the government doing each of the following as a way to prevent terrorist attacks in the United States. Allow the federal government to hold Arabs who are U.S. citizens in camps until it can be determined whether they have links to terrorist organizations. And here is Trump's phrasing.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Anti-environmental policies were also favored by the middle in this more recent period. Support for drilling in Anwar, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, was more than 10% higher among the middle, 44% of elites versus 55% of middle income.
And after that, we fought like hell to get Anwar. He talked me into it.
Elimination of taxes on gasoline had an even larger gap, 40 versus 54%. One policy Trump has yet to enact from this period, which had high middle income support, but lower elite support, is military intervention in Iran, although Trump has reversed diplomatic steps taken by the Obama administration.
I withdrew the United States from the terrible Iran nuclear deal.
Altogether, this paints a picture of modern middle-income Americans as being much more isolationist, anti-environmental, xenophobic, bellicose, and moralizing than the elites. In the 1960s period data, we can also see middle-income earners express more racist opinions by opposing fair housing regulations, as well as legalization of interracial marriages.
We got the worst, nastiest mail we got on any piece of legislation on the Fair Housing Act. And we were unable to move it.
And so, many of the people worried about the existence of American oligarchy may want to rephrase their concerns. A lot of the policies supported by median income earners of society may actually be wrong-headed and dangerous. The data confirm that middle-income respondents do support at least mild redistributive policies, such as higher taxes on very high incomes, as well as reductions in Medicare and Social Security, which would more heavily impact the wealthy. But it seems clear that focus on the environment, concern for foreigners or foreign trade, or liberal cultural values alienate the middle class of U.S. society. When we look at the pattern here, it seems very likely that some advisor to Trump performed the same analysis that I did on the Page and Gilens data. It seems suspiciously coincidental that Trump has resurrected policies like drilling in Anwar and restricting stem cell research. The fact that he mentions Japan in his campaign announcement, when Japan has had a suffering economy since the late 90s Asian financial crisis, is what is most convincing to me that he likely had people on his team looking at this exact data. And he's had a lot of political success with this strategy. There are a few lessons liberals can take away from this. One is to shift topics rather than attempt to argue about the coal industry or immigrants. The issue of decency in media is one area where middle-income voters differ from elites. There may be obvious reasons Trump hasn't pursued this issue. Attacking Trump for his vulgarity may actually be effective, even if counterintuitive for most liberals. Most importantly, we should be focusing on the redistributive policies on which we agree with middle-income voters, and which Trump has worked against, with large tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy.